Fudo was a violent loser who gets sent to a special academy for delinquents after beating up his classmates. However, everything changes when he discovers the school is ruled by baddies who want to make him obedient, so he rizzes them and claps them instead. On the day Fudo first arrived at the academy, fully expecting to see some hot baddies he can rizz up, but he is instead stunned to see all the female students on campus carrying their own weapons, staring him down menacingly. Just then, a high-cholesterol dude named Masuko suddenly appears and greets him, and Fudo is shocked to see how much he resembles James Charles if he forgot to take Ozempic. Masuko explains that all male students at this school are required to wear makeup as part of the school's rules, but Fudo tells Masuko to screw the rules because he is planning to live his life here however he wants. Meanwhile, inside the academy, the school's strongest students, known as the Supreme Five Swords, gather for an emergency meeting. Their leader, Rin, brings up Fudo, who is reported to have gotten expelled from his previous school after he started a brawl and sent 40 students to the hospital. In the middle of their discussion, a girl named Emma tells them that she herself has fought Fudo before and warns them that he has a dangerous move called the Spirit Bullet. Later, Fudo goes into his classroom and is confronted by Rin and her goons, who are ready to discipline him. They explain that when the academy changed from an all-girls school to a co-ed one, the girls were given weapons to defend themselves and cut off the men's pickles just in case they tried using it. Rin tells Fudo that she has until the bell rings to make him obey to their rules, but Fudo refuses to bark for anyone, so without warning, he blitzes under a girl's skirt and runs towards the window to escape. Rin chases after him, determined to discipline him before the bell rings, and starts being aggressive, swinging her sword like she wants Fudo's head off. Fudo manages to block using his feet and Rin praises his sharp reflexes. She then activates her mirrored breathing technique like she's a Hashira and forces Fudo to go fully defensive, even managing to cut his shirt open and later his face. To even the odds, Fudo puts on his special gloves and begins blocking her attacks directly. Just then, Fudo trips and gets himself cornered, giving Rin the opening to start spamming attacks on him. Suddenly, Fudo slips under her and puts his hand on her ribs. Fudo tells her that she has lost, cause while she has a sword, he has a gun. In one swift movement, he activates his Spirit Bullet, sending Rin flying and surprising other Supreme Swords with what they just witnessed. He explains that it is a failed sword technique. He turned into something new, but Rin calls its name the Spirit Bullet. Fudo demands to know who told her about it. But before she can answer, Rin's junior, Nono, rushes in and smacks him on the head. The impacts causes Fudo to fall on Rin and give her the Tango of Tongues, even destroying her mask. Realizing what just happened, Fudo immediately pulls away, blaming Nono for her attack, but Rin gets up. Both crying and furious, she snaps at him and promises that she will shove her sword somewhere he wouldn't enjoy. The next day, as Nono gets ready for school, another member of the Five Swords, Merit, arrives and announces that she will deal with Fudo herself since Rin failed to stop him. Just then, Mary's royal assistant, Choka, immediately interrupts and insists that she should take Mary's place instead. This immediately sparks an argument between her and Nono, since Nono also wants revenge on Fudo for what he did to Rin. At the same time, Fudo relaxes in the boys' bath with Masuko like a couple of homies, and he asks Fudo how he managed to defeat the leader of the Supreme Swords before the first class even ended. Fudo explains that he spent his entire childhood mastering the technique that took Rin down, the Spirit Bullet. Fudo then asks Masuko how he can get a permit to leave the school grounds, and Masuko tells him that he needs official stamps from the Supreme Swords, which Fudo knows sounds impossible. After the bath, Fudo suddenly gets a headache, and Masuko offers him some aspirin and shows him how to use the school's student menu to order supplies. While looking through the list, Fudo comments that the boys probably need something extra to take the edge off, like a magazine to help them goon or a pack of the devil's lettuce. Masuko admits that there is a smuggler who can provide better items, but only for a higher price. After hearing this, Fudo simply orders a cake, and he brings it to class the next day to try to win over the girls, but they all scatter immediately. He asks one student where Rin is, and the student says that Rin is out sick, likely from catching something after their accidental kiss. Fudo leaves and finds Masuko, asking if the girls usually eat lunch in their dorms. Masuko says that makes no sense because the dorms are far from the cafeteria, but he suddenly realizes what Fudo is planning and desperately tries to stop him from meeting Rin. Meanwhile, at the dorm, Rin lies in bed, feeling weak and blaming Fudo for both the kiss and the cold she caught afterward. As she tosses around in bed, she is shocked to realize that she actually wants another kiss from him,
You naughty.
which sends her into a panic. She senses someone approaching and quickly puts on her cracked mask. At that moment, Fudo climbs in through her window and she immediately tries to attack him. But he stops her and calmly reminds her how their last encounter ended. Fudo compliments her room and hands her a box of cakes. Then he gets a closer look at her and tells her that she is actually very cute. After all the glaze he gave her, Fudo finally asks for the permit, but Rin immediately refuses. She explains that only students who properly represent the school can receive one, and after everything he has done, he does not qualify. He then asks whether students wear uniforms outside the campus, and Rin misunderstands this and accuses him of wanting to see her in normal clothes. Fudo plays along and agrees, which causes Rin to fold and give him the permit, claiming it is only repayment for the cake. Fudo jokes about thanking her with another kiss, but due to the fever, she faints, and Fudo quickly catches her before she gets the floor. Just then, Nono arrives with food, and when she sees Fudo holding on to her like he's about to jiggle her jugs, Nono completely snaps and activates every trap hidden in the dorm room. Fudo barely escapes and runs outside, where Choka spots him. She pulls out a whip and apologizes in advance to Nono, saying she will be the one to take Fudo down first. Choka then blocks his path, introduces herself as Mary's little sister, and claims to be the leader of the Junior 5 Swords. But then, Nono catches up, calling her backstory a complete bull, and reveals that she is the real leader of the Junior 5 Swords. Choka ignores her and attacks anyway, and Nono joins the fight, giving Fudo just enough time to put on his gloves. Then the two girls decide to work together, and students across the school gather at windows to watch. Nono attacks first, driving Fudo back with a powerful combo, which Fudo sees as the same techniques as Rin's. Choka then strikes with her whip, cutting his arm and irritating him. The girls explain that he is now facing a level 2 correction, meaning punishment from 2 fighters at once, something only the person dubbed the Empress has ever survived. Fudo dodges Choka's whip, blocks Nono's follow-up, and when they try to coordinate, he grabs the whip and turns it against them. He jokes that they need to improve their teamwork before firing the spirit bullet, blasting Nono straight into Choka. The impact leaves Nono barely able to move, collapsed on top of Choka. As Fudo steps forward to finish the fight, Nono suddenly remembers how Fudo kissed Rin and starts crying out of fear. Choka tries to comfort her but ends up crying out of fear of Fudo's lips too. The entire school immediately turns on Fudo, labeling him as the next Diddy, and he quickly runs away. Later, Rin meets him and hands him the permit, which has her stamp on it. Fudo thanks her and walks off, but Nono and Choka rush in and loudly report everything that happened, and how he was about to touch them with his crusty lips. Hearing that, Rin becomes so furious that she faints on the spot. That night, Choka lies awake, traumatized, while Mary soaks in the bath and plans how to deal with Fudo, refusing to let him disrespect Choka again. The next day, Fudo enters class and finds Rin waiting for him, but this time, everyone keeps their distance, fearing his ungodly lips. Rin draws her sword and declares that she is appointing herself as Fudo's personal supervisor, determined to protect everyone from his mischievous fat dong. Later that night, Choka rushes to Mary to inform her what Rin just did, and when Mary learns that Rin has placed Fudo under her direct supervision, she immediately declares it unacceptable. That same night, at the boys' dorm, Masuko warns Fudo that he has angered Mary, another member of the 5 Swords who is far more ruthless than Rin. Masuko says that with both baddies watching him like hawks, his situation is now dangerous. However, Fudo remains unfazed and instead asks about someone higher than the 5 Swords. Masuko explains that the person above them is known as the Empress, and Masuko describes her as a strange and antisocial fighter who does not get along with anyone and attacks using hand strikes as sharp as blades. The description triggers a memory for Fudo, reminding him of a person he once lost to. The next day, Rin storms into the boys' dorm and yells at Fudo to get moving. She inspects his belongings for contraband, but finds nothing serious. Disappointed, she declares that she will follow him everywhere and personally keep him under control. Mary overhears this and accuses Rin of being too soft on Fudo and questions why she would protect someone who caused so much trouble. Rin shuts down the accusation and defends Fudo, but Mary refuses to back down. The argument escalates as Mary openly suggests that Rin has become emotionally attached to him because of their earlier encounter. Rin snaps and boldly declares that Fudo is her responsibility alone. She orders him to head to class while she deals with Mary. Realizing Rin will not listen, Mary draws her rapier to force some sense into her. As the two clash, Choka charges after Fudo, determined to deal with him herself. In their confrontation, Fudo catches Choka's whip and calmly shuts her down, explaining that he wants nothing to do with her. In that moment, she spots his exposed bratwurst and collapses from fear. Fudo adjusts himself, but then notices Amo standing nearby and is confused by why she's here. He remembers her from the past, when he believed she was a boy, and how he once nearly lost his life before she offered to let him live as her servant. He calls out to her, but she stops him, saying she needs time to recover before they fight again. He asks her how she ended up as a woman, and Emma says she has always been one. Before he can continue, Mary suddenly appears and completely panics when she notices Fudo's jackhammer. Mary then rushes to Choka, who is traumatized, and by the time Fudo looks back, Amu has already disappeared. Suddenly, Fudo senses danger and turns to find Mary standing behind him, struggling to express just how badly she wants to discipline him. At the same time, Amu, now inside the building, recalls her past fight with Fudo, where he sent countless opponents flying and refused to submit to her authority. She remembers overpowering him once, yet wonders why she failed to finish him. Frustrated by these thoughts, she vows to defeat him the next time they meet. Outside, Mary attacks Fudo with her fencing attacks, and he dodges what he can, but several strikes land. Mary continues cutting into him, effortlessly exploiting his weak points. She tells him he has nothing left, claiming she has destroyed everything that made him strong. Desperate, Fudo charges at her and she stabs at him again, but Fudo blocks her strike with his wanking magazine. As she jumps back to recover, he closes the distance and knocks her out using the magazine before using his magic bullet and blasts her away. While defeated, Mary jumps to conclusions about his intentions, accusing him of wanting to use her to tickle his pickle.
Yes! 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 Yes!
But Fudo to shut them down completely. Hearing his rejection, she assumes that he must find her unattractive compared to Rin. So in desperation, she offers him to jiggle her jugs, but he rejects her again. She asks if he prefers the good old cheeks instead, and he admits he likes both, but says she is making things too easy, which completely spoils the mood for him. Fudo then asks about her stamp for the permit, and Mary hides it between her melons, forcing him to reach for it. Even then, he pulls his hand back at the last moment and firmly says no. That is when Mary realizes that not every man is a creep. Suddenly, Fudo hears Rin's voice, and seeing Mary exposed, Rin attacks immediately without waiting for an explanation. Mary steps in to clarify what happened, carefully leaving out the part where she was rejected. In the end, Mary agrees to stamp the permit and declares that she will supervise Fudo alongside Rin. As Fudo looks at both of them, he realizes his life has just become far more complicated than before. Several days later, during lunch break on the rooftop, the girls argue non-stop over who should supervise Fudo, and the nonsense argument drags on so long that Fudo starts questioning whether they are even doing their jobs. While they argue, Fudo casually points out that they are flashing him, which only adds fuel to the chaos. In that moment, Warabi, one of the 5 sword, returns from her trip to Hawaii. She spots Rin and Mary chasing after Fudo, and quickly concludes that she needs to step in. Then, she calls for a meeting with the others, but only Satori shows up. Warabi believes that Rin and Mary have grown friendly with the very delinquent they are meant to discipline, and because of that, she adds both of them to the correction list. That afternoon during gym class, a strange crowd starts to form. Curious, Fudo follows the noise and is shocked to find his massive roommate, Masuko, tied to a cross in the middle of the grounds. He wants to free him, but Rin and Mary stop him, sensing that something is wrong. Suddenly, loud, generic laughter echoes across the school grounds, and above them, they see Warabi standing triumphantly on the rooftop. She announces that it is time to deal with the degenerates who disrupt the peace of the academy. And to accomplish this, she declares the beginning of the Warabimpics, the Festival of Blood. Warabi names Fudo as the primary target and explains that the only way to save Masuko is for him to clear her countless challenges, and if he succeeds, she promises to stamp his permission slip. Hearing this immediately fires Fudo up, and with a snap of Warabi's fingers, her minions appear. One of them presents an official document bearing both Warabi's and Satori's stamps, confirming the council's approval. Rin and Mary protest, accusing Warabi of acting without their consent, but she shuts them down, scolding them for being busy gobbling on Fudo's glizzy instead of disciplining him. Then, Warabi reveals the first challenge and unleashes a sumo ring. Fudo gets fired up at the sight of the ring, but Rin yanks his ear and warns him that this is no joke. When Fudo asks about Warabi's past games, they remind him of an incident where she set a student on fire and chased him with gasoline until part of the school burned down. Moments later, Warabi's goons toss them sumo belts and Fudo starts pulling down his pants to change, causing Rin and Mary to shout at him to wear the belt over his clothes. Just then, Choka and Nono attack the minions, but they are taken down instantly, forcing Rin to jump in and intervene to stop the fight, promising to settle things later and focus on the match. The goons then offer assistance with the belts, but the girls notice that Fudo is already dressed. Rin drags him aside and asks him to adjust her belt. They move somewhere private, and when Fudo starts with Rin, she feels a pleasing sensation and starts making happy noises. Once Rin is done, Mary panics and asks Rin to handle hers instead, but Rin pretends to forget, forcing Mary to endure the same treatment. Then, as the match begins, a camera crew broadcasts the event, and the girls quickly hide their assets from their leering eyes. When Fudo steps into the ring and asks who his opponent is, Warabi's goons scold him for assuming it would be that easy. Suddenly, Warabi's bear Kyobo presents itself as Fudo's opponent, and Fudo panics at the sight of a literal bear. But Warabi explains that Kyobo is one of her musketeers. Rin and Mary protest immediately, arguing that fighting a non-human breaks the rules, and Warabo agrees. So she declares that if any one of them defeats Kyo, the entire group will pass the round. Fudo quickly realizes that the setup is meant to exhaust them from the very first challenge. Rin and Mary offer to fight in his place, hoping to conserve his energy, but he shocks them by insisting on facing the bear himself. Warabi casually drinks a soda and announces that the match will begin once the bottle hits the ground. As she finishes it, Fudo reflects on how absurd the situation is, but he refuses to back down from a threat enforced by violence. The bottle strikes the ground, and Fudo charges Kyobo head-on. He forces the bear toward the edge of the ring, but raw strength is not enough to push it out. Warabi mocks his effort, but Rin and Mary know exactly what it means for Fudo to make contact. There, Fudo channels his energy and fires a magic bullet into the bear, but doesn't budge. Kyono then swipes at him, but Fudo dodges and fires another magic bullet with his left hand. Enraged, Kyobo attacks again, but Fudo avoids the strike, blasts its foot, and appears behind it. With sheer strength, he lifts the massive bear off the ground, and the crowd is stunned, warning him that he can be crushed if it falls. Even so, Fudo refuses to back down, gripping Kyo by its sumo belt. Fueled by anger over Masuko being dragged into this, he prepares to slam the bear. The audience braces for impact, but Fudo suddenly stops it, revealing that Kyobo's sumo belt has loosened, meaning that Kyobo is disqualified while Fudo is declared the winner. Rin and Mary cheer, while Warabi is shocked by what she just saw. Furious, she orders them to change and head inside before commanding everyone else to switch to Red Pepper Tower shift. Drawing her weapon, Warabi declares that playtime is over and that the real war is about to begin. After Kyogo leaves the ring, Fudo notices that Warabi's minions have completely vanished, and he wonders what Warabi is planning now. Just then, Warabi announces that the festival is over and declares that Fudo will receive his reward, the stamp on his permission slip, within the next 10 minutes. She explains that to receive it, he must come alone to the rooftop, where the process will be broadcast live. Warabi refers to the school building as her fortress, revealing that she has stationed her subordinates throughout it, ready to ambush Fudo the moment he enters. The girls warn Fudo that this is obviously a trap, and insist there is no reason for him to go inside, but Fudo refuses to back down. He explains that Warabi invited him directly, and he still needs to rescue his big back buddy. Fudo tells Rin and Mary not to follow him, but they remind him that supervising him is literally their job. Then, the girls change back to their uniforms, and Fudo checks on them and sees the forbidden bakery. Before he can escape, Nono and Choka appear out of nowhere, and they order him to inform their mistresses that they will be heading to the rooftop as well. Then, Warabi opens her fortress for Fudo to advance, and before he can even move far, Choka and Nono charge in ahead of him, volunteering to deal with the lower-level enemies. Fudo passes along Choka and Nono's message, and although the girls worry about their beloved juniors, Fudo tells them to have some trust. As Choka and Nono wipe the floor with Warabi soldiers, they close in on the goons. As the battle rages, Fudo searches for a way to reach the rooftop, and every door is locked, so he suggests blasting through one. Before he can act, the wall explodes inward, and Satori leaps down, smiling brightly as she greets him. She openly states that she dislikes the way Warabi is handling things, and as she approaches Fudo's group, they prepare for combat, but Satori suddenly sheathes her sword. She explains that the council only approved the Warabimpics, meaning everything beyond that is her own business. At the same time, a group of masked girls frees Masuko elsewhere in the building, and Warabi is annoyed that they chose this exact moment to interfere. Suddenly, Fudo arrives at the rooftop with Rin and Mary, and seeing the two girls with him, Warabi concludes that they have become completely captivated by him. She demands that they explain what's so special about Fudo's pickle, and the two stumble over their words in embarrassment. Suddenly, Kyugo reappears and Warabi declares that she will now demonstrate true combat skill. Mary hears reinforcements rushing toward the rooftop and leaves the group to stop them. Rin mocks Warabi's fighting style, assuming she relies entirely on the bear. But Fudo calmly walks up to Kyobo and announces that everyone knows a bear's weak points. He confidently explains that Kyobo will attack with its front paws and that he can counter by ducking and grabbing from behind. However, Warabi informs him that Kyobo knows how to box after training under Kebib and Daegistan. Under her control, the bear launches an attack on Fudo, while Rin goes after Warabi. To Rin's shock, Warabi dodges effortlessly and drives a blade into Rin's shoulder, and Warabi boasts that she is no weaker than her beloved bear. Then, Fudo fires a magic bullet under Kyobo's arm, but the bear does not budge, and instead, it pressures him into a corner. Beside him, Warabi mocks Rin, pointing out the contradiction in her earlier confidence and accusing her of abandoning her role entirely, turning from hating Fudo to standing beside him. Seeing her faltering, Fudo shouts encouragement at her, telling Rin that he still has not properly thanked her for choosing to help him earlier. Fudo then provokes the bear, faking an attack, and Kyobo instinctively guards, leaving its face wide open. There, Fudo lands a devastating punch, sending the bear flying. Now alone, Warabi attacks Rin, but Rin overcomes her fear and steps forward into Warabi's blade while swinging her own. Warabi dodges instinctively and misses, which costs her the fight, giving Rin the win. Moments later, Choka and Nono arrive on the rooftop, ready to assist, only to realize the battle is already over. They thank Fudo for his help, only to see him holding sumo belts and awkwardly asking for assistance, putting them on Warabi and her goons. But because he makes it sound creepy, every blade immediately turns toward him, and he is chased across the rooftop. The next morning, Rin examines her cracked mask and remembers the moment Fudo praised her appearance after seeing her without it. Nono notices her mood and asks her about what is bothering her. Rin asks whether it is really fine to leave the mask broken. Excited, Nono tells her it actually looks better that way. Nearby, Mary sprays perfume and asks Choka for reassurance about her looks, and Choka glazes her senior, calling her the most beautiful girl in the school, giving Mary the confidence she needs before they head out together. At school, Mary and Rin watch in disbelief as crowds of girls swarm around Fudo, begging him to make them choke on his slim gym and praising him for his bravery from when he fought a massive bear, which only irritates Mary and Rin further as they realize that others also want his attention. Throughout class, Fudo's fangirls keep staring at Fudo as if he were a celebrity, while Fudo wants to sleep. Rin notices him slacking off and swiftly kicks him awake, leaving the surrounding students confused by her reaction. Later, Mary spots several of Fudo's admirers lingering in the hallway, and immediately sends them off to class. The situation worsens when even more girls gather to cheer him on as he walks to the vending machine for a drink. Mary and Rin question why everyone is suddenly obsessed with him, but Fudo walks straight past them. They stop him to ask where he is going, and he casually explains that he wants to eat lunch. They decide to join him, and their jealous aura causes him to lose his appetite. When he brings this up, the two remind him that their presence prevents the other girls from crowding him. He agrees, but Rin quickly warns him not to let the sudden popularity go to his head. After school, Mary and Rin feel disappointed that Fudo failed to notice their attempt to look pretty for him. That evening during dinner, Mary and Rin complain about Fudo and argue over how both of them gave him their stamps. Mary suggests that they discipline him even more, and while Rin initially resists, she begins to wonder if it might actually be the answer. Elsewhere, Fudo suddenly feels a chill run down his spine as they speak about him. Obese Carnation asks what is wrong, and Fudo explains the uneasy feeling, not knowing that someone was watching him. The next morning, Fudo waits for Mary and Rin at a meeting spot on the way to school. Instead of greeting him, the girls question his intentions, sensing that his behavior is strange. Fudo talks about how well he slept and surprises them by noticing that Rin has returned to her old outfit, and that Mary is no longer wearing yesterday's perfume. Shocked that he paid attention, they demand that he will be inspected for any contraband. Just then, they discover a photo showing him getting down and dirty with Satori, and they demand an explanation. Fudo doesn't remember him clapping Satori, but knowing the girls don't believe him, he runs away, all the while they chase him. He runs straight into Kyobo and Warabi, who scold him for running in the hallway. But when Mary and Rin arrive there, they only see Warabi and Kyobo, with Fudo nowhere to be found, so they go somewhere else. Once they are gone, Fudo emerges from hiding and thanks Kyobo for the rescue. Warabi reveals that Kyobo is actually a chick, and she has fallen head over heels for him. Fudo then explains what happened, and Warabi laughs at how absurd it sounds. Fudo wonders why Satori would betray him, and Warabi explains that Satori probably wanted to ruin his relationships before making her own move. That explanation reminds Fudo of the picture, and how the glowing sensor in the photo suggests the image was altered. So he proposes finding the original picture as proof. After stating his plan, he walks off confidently, but Warabi suspects he intends to sneak into the girl's dorm. She informs him that security there has been tightened since the last incident, and Fudo says that is exactly why he will not need to sneak in, leaving her confused. That night, Mary and Rin interrogate Fudo harshly after capturing him, demanding answers about the image. After discovering numerous scars on his back, they decide to stop. As she and Rin leave, they quietly wonder where those scars came from while Fudo struggles to recover. Warabi finds him later, gives him food, and calls him reckless for intentionally letting himself get caught. Earlier, he had explained that it was part of a plan to gain access and uncover the truth. Warabi agrees to help, wanting to understand Satori's motives. When Fudo says she does not need to come, she refuses. Kyobo bumps into him playfully and Warabi smiles, confirming they will see it through together. Then they reach Satori's room, and there they find nothing. So Warabi concludes that Satori must be keeping the photo with her. As they leave the room, Fudo triggers a trap and narrowly avoids serious injury. Then two girls approach, and Kyobo shields Fudo with her body. While Warabi casually greets them, Kyobo suddenly collapses from overstimulation after Fudo accidentally grabs her hairy melons, forcing Warabi to shield Fudo. Just then, a strange noise draws attention, but the girls become distracted by a small bear cub and chase after it. Once safe, Warabi nearly loses her temper but restrains herself. Later, near the bath, they find no trace of the photo. Warabi notices that Satori's sword is missing just as a masked girl enters. Before Fudo can speak, she attacks, but Warabi blocks it instantly. At that moment, Satori steps out of the bath, saying that she has been expecting him. Fudo's attention shifts to the small pouch hanging from her neck, and he realizes that the picture he's looking for is there. Satori's goon, Misogi, suddenly attempts a surprise attack, but Fudo easily catches the needle midair. He accuses her of stalking him, and explains how he has felt watched for some time, blaming Satori for dragging Misogi into the situation. Satori calmly reveals that she gained access to his room with help from his close friend, Masuko, and Fudo recalls how he woke up that night to find her on top of him, struggling to get his blicky to turn into Stiffy. Misogi had taken photos during the incident, and before Fudo could react, Satori slipped a sleeping pill into his mouth through a kiss. Back in the bath area, Fudo realizes Satori already knows about their investigation when she reveals the original image is stored safely inside her pouch. Meanwhile, Mary is chugging down wine while complaining about Fudo to Choka like a single mom who didn't get child support, and Choka can only listen to her venting while nodding along and continuously refilling her glass. Mary begins to wonder aloud if Fudo was only interested in her body. But this triggers a memory of him refusing to touch her inappropriately. Realizing that behavior does not match his character, she grows conflicted and decides to trust him. At the same time, Rin is chugging down barley tea, venting to Nono about Fudo, refusing to forgive him for diving into another pair of cheeks aside from hers. When Rin asks for Nono's opinion of Fudo, Nono coldly calls him worthless for taking her first kiss, and that memory resurfaces for Rin, who abruptly declares she is going to bed. But as she looks at her broken mask, she remembers how Fudo complimented her looks, causing her to get flustered and struggle to sleep. Back in the bath, Fudo demands to know Satori's true intentions, and she simply says that his existence annoys her, so she wants to get rid of him. Warabi calls her despicable and swears she will not let her succeed. And then she chooses Misogi as her opponent, leaving Fudo to handle Misogi. She suggests that they fight in the bath, and Fudo asks her to cover up, not wanting to fight her with a stiffy, but she refuses and even tempts him, making his Slim Jim turn fat. Warabi gets annoyed seeing this and kicks him into the bath, forcing him to fight. Suddenly, Warabi's vision starts to blur out, and she realizes that Misogi's darts are coated with sedatives. Out of desperation, she stabs herself to stay alert, vowing to protect Fudo for Kyobo's sake. Meanwhile, Fudo starts yapping with Satori to lower down his hard blicky, but Satori suddenly hits him hard enough that he flies, and asks him whether he chooses to die by getting stabbed or slashed. She realizes that Fudo just manages to block her attack just then, and praises him for it, but quickly follow up with a slash. Fudo quickly dodges but still receives a cut on his cheek, but in that moment, he spots the pouch and lunges for it, but Satori deflects his hand and counters, managing to cut his back. She praises his evasive ability and mocks him, suggesting he honed it by avoiding responsibility. Cornered and overwhelmed, Fudo doesn't know what to do or where to look, considering she has her plots out, but he realizes that she planned this. Fudo calls her a monster for this level of tricks, and that particular word stirs something in her. Satori recalls how her parents were the first ones to label her that way and admits she never learned what expression to wear afterward. She charges at him again, and Fudo blocks her strike, but he notices that her form is slipping. So he goes for a counter, only to realize it is bait she planted, and Fudo takes another hit to the face. Seeing her attack just now, Fudo concludes she's using a particular sword style, but she tells him that he's wrong, and suddenly changes sword style, surprising him. Inside, Warabi struggles in her fight against Misogi as she starts feeling her body go heavier. Another dart strikes her, worsening her condition, but Warabi cuts herself again to stay conscious, takes a firm stance, and boldly declares she will win. Back in the bath, Fudo is struck by yet another unfamiliar technique and finally realizes Satori can freely mix moves from 10 different schools. When he voices this, she acknowledges it and proposes turning the battle into a deadly word chain game. In quick succession, Satori jumps from one technique to the next, while playing a game of word chain in her own head, overwhelming Fudo. In the middle of her attacks, Fudo calls her a monster, and he notices that her form drops again. Seeing that, he gets an idea to exploit a girl's weakness from seeing a man's schnitzel, the same way Choka lost to him. Fudo then drags Satori into the sauna and removes his plot armor, letting his bratwurst breathe the fresh air. That shocks and angers Satori, but when she attacks again, Fudo is able to block her attacks this time. Fudo bluntly tells her that despite calling herself a monster, she keeps watching his Johnny Jr. dangling too closely, which makes her movements easy to predict. At the same time, Warabi manages to recover enough strength just as Misogi is about to end her, and Warabi lays Misogi the smackdown to defeat her and disarms her darts. With Misogi's weapon in hand, Warabi beats her senseless. Just then, one member of the 5 swords, Tsukuyo, approaches the bath, knowing everything that is happening using her all-hearing ears. Warabi removes Misogi's mask, and when she sees her face, she is shocked. Meanwhile, Fudo manages to defeat Satori and tells her to surrender, but the freak threatens to drop the evidence for her innocence into the water. To her surprise, Fudo smacks her face without hesitation, not caring that the evidence is drowning in the water. Confused, she asks why he is so angry, and Fudo states that he did it because Satori made Rin cry. Hearing that, Satori doesn't understand his sentiment, but acknowledges this as honorable and remarks that humans are fascinating. He reminds her that she is human as well and points out how upset she became after being called a monster, leaving Satori pouting. Later, Fudo dreams about Satori giving him the sloppy toppy, but wakes up to Kyobo on top of him, licking him all over like she's in mating season. Fudo notices that his body is wrapped in bandages, and he feels a cold shiver and realizes he must have been unconscious for a long time and fully examined. He then asks about Warabi, and Satori informs him that Warabi is sleeping next door, and Fudo breathes a sigh of relief. He then asks how he ended up in the infirmary, and he remembers what happened earlier. Right after their battle, he tried to help Satori out of the pool, but instead, she pulled him back in and held him underwater. She hid him there because she sensed Tsukuyo coming toward the baths, and outside, Warabi's goons found Warabi and Tsukuyo filled after. She ordered the housekeeper to examine everyone there and take them all to the infirmary. Then, Tsukuyo confronted Satori in the hot springs, and Satori tried to trick Tsukuyo by saying she was bathing alone. When Tsukuyo pressed Satori about the man she was hiding, Satori played dumb, so Tsukuyo simply told the man hiding that she would be waiting for him near the fountain, then left. With the coast being clear, Fudo burst out of the water, gasping for air, and he angrily scolded Satori for putting him in danger without warning. Satori brushed it off and said she saved him from being discovered by one of the strongest sword fighters in the school. She warned him that no matter how confident he was, he could never defeat that woman. Fudo ignored the warning and said he would face her anyway. As he stepped out of the bath, his strength suddenly gave out after all the torture and punishment he endured, and he collapsed. Satori casually said that at least this time, he would fall asleep naturally instead of being drugged like before. Later that night, Rin tries counting sheep to get some sleep, but keeps seeing Fudo's face, and she realizes that she can't stop thinking about him, so she convinces herself that she needs to check on him in the torture room. She tiptoes her way to sneak there, but suddenly, she runs into Mary, who has the same idea as hers. They lie to each other, saying that they simply want to get some midnight calories, so they decide to go to the cafeteria together. There, they both drink tea and pretend to relax while secretly waiting for the other to fall asleep so they can sneak away. Their plan becomes more difficult when Choka and Mary pop up, surprised to see them. The two join them in their little tea party and insist that they go to sleep soon. but Rin and Mary quickly make excuses to stay there. Rin suddenly decides to change tactics by drinking her tea quicker, turning it into an unplanned drinking contest, believing she can outdrink Mary. Then, as everyone is reaching their limits and bladders, Satori walks in on them and informs them that Fudo has been moved to the infirmary. The girls ask how he got there, and Satori spots complete bull, saying that Fudo clapped her in the bath, but slipped and got bruised where no man wants a bruise. Back in the infirmary, Fudo asks if he was carried through the girls' dorm while unconscious, and Satori says that he was, and she explains the cover-up story about how he was tortured by Rin and Mary, but then was saved by Warabi and Satori, who end up fighting for him. Fudo worries that no one would believe it, but Satori assures him that everyone accepted it without question, as they are the five swords. Meanwhile, Tsukuyo got sick after waiting for Fudo near the fountain, where it was chilly, and she got scolded by the dorm keeper. Back with Fudo, he changes into his damaged clothes and asks Satori if she is hurt. She says that he busted her eardrum, but brushes it off. Fudo apologizes for hurting her earlier, but she dismisses it. However, Satori informs him that she already told Rin and Mary what happened, and how he tried to clap her and slipped. He realizes that the two are gunning for his head, and just then, Satori tells him he has a visitor. Rin enters, clearly angry about what she heard, and Fudo prepares himself, thinking he might not survive what comes next. However, Rin bows deeply and apologizes, begging him to forgive her, and Fudo realizes that Satori actually did tell them the truth. Suddenly, Rin freezes at the sight of his trombone, and she wants to scream, but just manages to calm herself down. Then, the two sit down, and Rin apologizes again, this time also for noticing the scar on his back that she saw during the torture. When she asks about them, he tells her not to worry. However, Rin keeps apologizing for what she did and begs him to punish her so she can feel better. He reluctantly agrees and asks her to close her eyes. In that moment, her thoughts go wild, thinking that her tongue is about to dance with his. But then, he simply removes her mask, saying that he always wanted to do this. Fudo notices that she's furious but chooses to hold it back, so he asks her why she wears the mask. Rin admits how embarrassing it feels to show her face and finally talks about her past, how her father clapped some ugly hoe behind her mother's back, and the mother channeled her anger at Rin, calling her face the face of the devil because she looked like her father. From then on, Rin wore a mask around her mother, and it carried throughout the years and became a part of who she was. She asks Fudo to keep this secret, not knowing that Warabi overhears everything while resting next door, struggling not to ruin their moment. Rin then tells Fudo how happy she was when Fudo once complimented her face, and it was the first time she ever felt like she wanted to take it off her face. Hearing that, Fudo hands her the mask and says he once planned to destroy it, but Mao wants her to move forward at her own pace. He then points out how she still loves her mother after everything, something he could never understand. He says that he never experienced a parent's love, and that he grew up as an orphan, where a swordsman took him in and trained him. Rin tears up hearing his story, and Fudo tells her that he's glad that he got to trade secrets with her. Just then, Mary storms into the infirmary to apologize to Fudo, and offers him to cream to her body, which Fudo rejects. Hearing that, Mary wonders if Rin already drained him dry, and Rin gets furious, starting another fight. Later that day, Fudo returns to his room, and Masuko greets his return, relieved to see him okay, but Fudo goes straight to bed. Masuko tries to talk, feeling guilty about how he betrayed him, but Fudo brushes it off, saying that he knows how Masuko did it for the sake of the dorm. Masuko smiles and mentions that he washed Fudo's pillowcase, and when Fudo checks it, he finds his stamps and expresses how happy he is. The next morning, Fudo dreams about the past, where he was lying in a pool of his own blood, barely alive, completely at Emu's mercy. She told him to surrender and warned that it was his final chance. He wakes up in a bad mood, unsettled by the dream and unsure why it suddenly returns. Elsewhere, a student discovers that the Empress has disappeared and panics. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, two sussy baka boys sing loudly while enjoying their shower. One of them notices something strange behind him, and when he turns around, he catches a glimpse of fast movement, like something straight out of a Conjuring movie. A long-haired blonde briefly peeks at them, and the two get scared, so they scream and sprint out of the bathroom. They rush down the hallway and run into Masuko, breathlessly claiming that they saw a monster in the bathroom. They then tell Fudo, who brushes it off and mocks them for being absolute sissies, but they insist that they are telling the truth. Fudo replies that anyone would be creeped out just by seeing the two of them bathing, and get offended and ask what his problem is. Fudo explains that he woke up in a bad mood, and he tries to go back to sleep, But his plan fails when Rin shouts from outside the dorm, ordering him to hurry up and head to school with her. Before leaving, Masuko hands Fudo his permission slip, and the sussy boys notice that he only needs 2 stamps left and praise him, believing he will finish soon. Masuko is less optimistic and warns that the final member will not be easy to deal with. At school, Tsukuyo informs the headmistress that the Empress has left her room. Realizing that Imu is now active, the headmistress thanks Tsukuyo and immediately announces that all classes for the day are cancelled. On the rooftop, Satori is skipping along while staring at the spicy picture between her and Fudo. Outside the dorm, Fudo meets Rin, who is already angry at how long he took to get ready. Noticing that Mary is missing, he asks where she is, and Rin explains that Mary is at the girls' dorm because something Choka owned was missing, alongside Warabi's little bear. At the girls' dorm, Warabi and several other girls search for the little bear Domo, but find nothing. The Musketeers suggest making it a school-wide search, but Warabi disagrees, fearing that if Satori is the one who finds Domo, she will treat it like a toy and get rough with it. So she tells the others they must search the entire school and find it before Satori does. Meanwhile, Mary runs into Fudo and Rin and explains that she is actually searching for a missing wig that belongs to Choka. Fudo and Rin are surprised to hear that, just now finding out that Choka wears a wig, and Mary begs them to help find it, explaining that Choka refuses to leave the dorm without it. Back on the rooftop, Satori wonders what kind of trouble she should stir up next. Just then, Mizogi pops up, saying that she has been looking for Satori. Elsewhere, Nono approaches Tsukuyo to ask if she's seen the missing wig, and Tsukuyo says that she knows nothing about it. When the student asks how she already knew, Tsukuyo replies that she hears everything. She looks at Fudo and wants to help, but when she looks back, Nono is already gone. Elsewhere, while searching for the wig, Mary overhears Warabi speaking to the Musketeers about Duomo, and completely misunderstands the situation. She convinces herself that they stole Choka's wig so Warabi could claim it for herself. When Fudo and Rin find Mary, she is still spiraling, trying to piece together her wild assumptions. Warabi soon appears and asks if anyone has seen Fudo, which causes Mary to snap and accuse her outright of theft. Fudo steps in and explains that everyone is actually searching for different things. However, instead of calming down, the group immediately begins arguing about whose problem matters more. As Fudo struggles to settle them down, he suddenly remembers the terrified boys from earlier and starts connecting the dots. Back at the bath, the 2 boys are showering again when the monster reappears. Panic overtakes them completely, and they grab anything within reach and start throwing it. One of them manages to grab the creature and hurl it away, and it lands right in front of Fudo, Rin, and Mary. That is when they realize the truth, that it is just Domo wearing Choka's wig, and they return in immediately. At that moment, Nono appears with a short girl beside her, revealed to be Choka without her wig. Choka demands her wig back, but Domo has already ruined it beyond repair. Rin urges them to forget about the wig and head to class, only for Nono to remind her that classes have been cancelled. Mary then shares the news of Amu's disappearance, and Fudo wonders aloud if this is the same Amu who once beat him nearly to death. They soon reunite with Warabi to return Domo, and Warabi is relieved that Satori did not find him so she can treat him like a toy. One of the Musketeers points out something troubling about the masked girl they fought earlier, noting that she looks exactly like the girl currently speaking with Satori. Mizogi tries to voice her concerns with Satori, but Satori smacks her and coldly tells her that her whining annoys her. Suddenly, Emu appears and tells Satori that she has crossed a line. She holds up a copy of the photograph, rips it apart, and calls Satori a lunatic who needs punishment. Satori merely shrugs, completely unfazed. Below, Warabi looks up and spots Emu standing with Satori on the rooftop. She immediately mounts Kyobo and shouts for everyone to stay clear of the area. On the roof, Satori tries to leave, but Emu steps aside, allowing her to pass. Mizogi senses the trap and tries to warn her, but it is too late. Satori attacks, and Emu instantly counters. Mizogi fires a dart, but it has no effect. Satori attacks again and is overwhelmed, with Mizogi also injured. As Emu prepares to finish Satori, Mizogi jumps in front of her and takes the blow instead. Tasting her blood, Emu realizes they are sisters. Mizogi reveals that she was originally named Satori, and once held the top position until her sister took everything from her, including her name and appearance. Despite it all, Mizogi says she still loves her sister before passing out. The words break through, restoring Mizogi's lost humanity. She cries out in anguish as she looks at her injured sister, only for Emu to strike her down and silence her forever. Warabi arrives seconds too late, Kyobo at her side. She challenges Emu directly, and Kyobo joins the fight. Together, they attack. But Emu counters their moves effortlessly, suffering little damage. She mocks Warabi for believing she could stop her. Nearby, Fudo walks with Masuko and notices Tsukuyo. Seeing his chance, Fudo prepares to approach her for the final stamp. Masuko panics and warns him that Tsukuyo is the most dangerous of the Supreme Five Swords. Ignoring the warning, Fudo steps forward confidently, only for Tsukuyo to swing her blade with such speed that it slices the air itself. By the time Fudo realizes what has happened, Tsukuyo has already returned her blade to its sheath. His legs give out, and he stumbles backward, falling clumsily to the ground. He never even sees when she draws or resheathes her sword, and Tsukuyo tells him that he has already died. She quickly reassures him that she did not actually cut him, and because the headmistress entrusted her with overseeing his case, she promises to halt her blade one more time. According to her orders, Fudo is allowed 2 strikes, but he has already gone far beyond that limit. She lists his offenses, starting with the first one, where he broke into the girls' dorm to see Rin, then the second one, when he did it again to reach Satori. But then, she says that the third strike, which is the most unforgivable act, was ignoring her while she waited for him near the fountain, which is the reason her attitude toward him has grown so cold. Fudo immediately apologizes, but Tsukuyo tells him he has exhausted her patience. Trying to stall for time, Fudo asks why someone so young is in charge of judging him in the first place. Tsukuyo answers without hesitation, saying that there are many reasons, but the most important one is simple, which is that she is way stronger than he is, like comparing a hydrogen bomb to a coughing baby. As a butterfly drifts past them, Tsukuyo slices it cleanly in half in the blink of an eye. Fudo instantly understands how dangerous she is and blurts out why someone her age would hurt butterflies, since girls usually adore them, unlike moths. Tsukuyo responds calmly that she cannot tell the difference, and that is when Fudo realizes the truth that she is as blind as a bat. She confirms it, explaining that her heightened hearing more than compensates for her lack of sight. She then explains her cutting technique in detail, the invisible blade, which is faster than what any eyes could see, and Fudo admits that he can barely perceive it at all. Noticing his reaction, Tsukuyo concludes that they share the same background, as they were both students of the Sword Academy of the same master. However, she criticizes his technique, calling it sloppy and unfocused, which makes her conclude that either his master was horrible or that he has been wasting his potential. Fudo lets out an awkward laugh and says that at least she could recognize him as a fellow swordsman. Tsukuyo explains how she deduced it. His burst speed and reflexes are far beyond normal, proof that he was raised in that environment. On the rooftop, Warabi stares in horror at the deep wound torn into her body by Emu. Kyogo launches another desperate attack, but Emu effortlessly parries and slashes the massive bear with her bare hand. Warabi screams in agony, and below, Fudo hears her screaming. The 3 musketeers rush in to stop Emu from finishing Warabi off, but she automatically counters them, driving her sharpened fingers into each of their bodies. Tsukuyo keeps talking, but Fudo finally interrupts and asks what is happening. She calmly explains that the Empress has gone on a rampage, and Tsukuyo describes Emu as someone who never got along with anyone from the moment she entered the academy. Yet despite that, Emu always spoke fondly of Fudo, as he was her complete opposite, someone who could befriend even his enemies, and he never once mentioned her in return. As Tsukuyo continues rambling, she suddenly realizes Fudo has left her. Enraged, she turns just as Fudo sprints toward the rooftop. Another scream echoes through the air as Emu slashes at Warabi's eyes. The scream rings throughout the school, drawing the attention of the 5 swords and their attendants. By the time Fudo reaches the rooftop, he sees Emu's victims scattered across the ground. His gaze locks onto Warabi, who is gravely injured. Rage consumes him, and he shouts Emu's name with pure bloodlusted hatred. He rushes to Warabi's side, but she tells him to help the others instead. He assures her that their injuries are not as severe as hers, and hearing that allows her to finally relax. Fudo desperately calls for help and realizes that the headmistress is standing right behind him. Meanwhile, Emu exits the school building and approaches Tsukuyo. Noticing the fury in her posture, Emu asks if Tsukuyo is concerned, but Tsukuyo replies that she was never friends with any of the victims. Emu simply walks past her and warns her to avert her eyes from what comes next. The others regroup, confronting Emu and demanding answers about the scream they heard. Emu coldly tells them she will recreate the same scream when she rips their vocal cords apart. The headmistress steps forward, shocking Fudo, who wonders who she truly is. She orders him aside and examines Warabi's injuries. After inspecting the damage, she concludes that Warabi will regain her sight after surgery. Fudo asks how he can help, and the headmistress points downstairs and tells him to deal with the cause while she handles the situation on the roof. When he looks below, he sees Rin and Mary attack Amu at the same time. But Amu easily deflects both strikes and counters with her fingers, cutting them deeply. She dismisses them as wastes of time and says they have already overstayed their relevance. The injured girls, confused, compare Amu's feet to blades. Amu scoffs and explains that their ignorance knows no limits. She says that the ultimate form of karate, the same one SpongeBob used, is forging the entire body into a single blade, which she calls Takemikazuchi. Amu advances toward Nono and Choka, who tremble in fear. Suddenly, Tsukio steps between them and asks Nono if she considers them friends. Nono hesitates, but when she notices Tsukio tightening her grip on her katana, she quickly nods. Hearing that, Tsukio smiles and vows to protect them. Amu smiles in return, admitting this confrontation came sooner than expected. She declares she is ready to discover which is superior, her perfected Kirit or Tsukio's blade. With a smug expression, Tsukio explains her auto-counter technique, describing how it turns the body into both shield and weapon. Then she asks Amu if her defense is capable of surviving a strike faster than lightning. Tsukio suddenly grows serious, and the air around her chills as she opens her eyes. Amu challenges her to attack, but in an instant, Tsukio closes the distance and executes a lightning-fast draw, striking Amu 3 times. Blood spills from Amu's mouth, but Tsukio is bleeding as well, courtesy of her auto-counter. Amu reveals the reason that happened, which is that Tsukio's katana snapped during the attack, and if it had been a real blade, she admits that the outcome might have been very different. Instead, Tsukio stands holding a cheap imitation sword. They reset their stances, and Tsukio admits that she does not understand why she is acting so emotionally and blames Fudo for it. As both prepare to strike again, Fudo suddenly charges in, shoving Tsukio aside as he screams Amu's name. Amu answers by powering up her strength and roars his name back at him. Her scream echoes across the entire school, loud enough that everyone immediately knows something is terribly wrong. Some time ago, Fudo meets Amu for the first time at their former academy. Unaware that she is actually a girl, mistaking her for a boy, he casually approaches her and teases her, saying she is far too cute to be male. Half-jokingly, he even says he wants to kiss her. Instead of getting angry, Amu laughs and takes a fighting stance, daring him to try. She tells him confidently that no one has ever succeeded. In the blink of an eye, Fudo vanishes from her sight, and before she can react, he appears behind her and casually rests a hand on her shoulder. Shocked, Amu strikes him away at once. Fudo laughs it off and introduces himself, explaining that what he used was a secret technique he is still developing. He boldly tells her that if she keeps acting hostile, he will overwhelm her completely. Rather than backing down, Amu accepts his challenge. That is when she introduces herself properly and acknowledges him as a friend, so they shake hands and she welcomes him to the school. Sometime later, a pathetically weak student named Kuroseki, whom Fudo had saved earlier from being beaten, thanked him and offered to show him around school. Before he can respond, Amu appears like a jealous ex and insists on guiding Fudo herself. Seeing how frightened Kuroseki looks, Fudo gently turns Amu down and chooses to spend time with Kurosaki instead. Amu becomes furious that Fudo rejects her in favor of someone she considers worthless, so she strikes Kurosaki out with a single blow. She then warns Fudo to associate only with those she deems worthy, declaring that she alone decides such things. Enraged, Fudo attacks her, and the memory merges with the present as he charges forward and strikes Amu across the cheek. She immediately activates her auto-counter and drives her fingers into his abdomen, sending him flying backward. To everyone's shock, Fudo stands back up unharmed and reveals a thick magazine strapped beneath his uniform, the same way he defended against Mary, as it has been his method of protection ever since their first battle. He curses loudly and accuses Amu of pretending not to recognize him, and she denies it, stating coldly that she is not the person he thinks she is. With the fight paused, Tsukio questions Fudo, asking why he would risk being cut by stepping in. When she hears his poorly explained answer, she asks him directly if he helped Amu, because they were friends. Fudo says that they were never friends to begin with, and that he does not want to be. He explains that friendship is not something people ask permission for, and that it happens naturally without force. Turning to Amu, he adds that sometimes people want to be friends, but things simply do not work out that way, which he calls a painful miscalculation. When Amu demands to know why, he tells her she should open her eyes like Tsukio and truly look around her. Taking a deep breath, Fudo shouts that he hates her, admitting that he cannot understand her violence and cannot accept the way she lives. The rejection strikes Amu harder than any blade, and she tells him coldly that he is about to see God. Fudo stares at her, wondering if he can truly defeat her. He drops the magazine and admits that the only thing he has left is his magic bullet, and if he loses, the other girls will suffer for it. Rin notices his fear and wavering confidence, and deep down, she wants to encourage him, but struggles to find the words. Then she remembers how he once encouraged her when she fought Warabi. Looking closely at Amu, she notices the injuries Tsukuyo left behind, and she recalls how, at the start, Amu warned them to be cautious of Fudo's techniques. Together, Mary and Rin shout for Fudo not to lose faith and that his magic bullet will work. Hearing this, Tsukuyo finally understands what friendship truly means. Fudo takes a sword stance, and Tsukuyo quickly analyzes it, declaring it the most effective style to use against the Empress. Fudo vows to fire the magic bullet with his other hand as well, and when Amu goes to threaten the others, he charges, and the two exchange blows in a fierce clash. Using his footwork, Fudo slips behind Amu, but she drives her elbow into his stomach and warns him that the same trick will not work twice. As she attempts another strike, she realizes he has removed his jacket. He lunges again, but she flings the jacket into his face, blinding him. He curses under his breath, knowing he has been outplayed, but Tsukuyo warns him just in time about an overhead kick, and he retreats. She criticizes his hesitation, telling him his fear is clouding his judgment and is holding him back. She also reveals that Amo has already exposed her own weakness during their battle, which is that she's weak to good old fan service. Hearing this, Fudo smiles and remarks that Tsukuyo must want him dead. She calmly replies that when that time comes, she will be the one to do it herself. Fudo's confidence surges as memories of his joyful days at the academy return. Following Tsukuyo's advice, he removes his tie and takes off his shirt like Grey Fullbuster, declaring that he will defeat Amu to avenge everyone she hurt. Watching him, Amu wonders why he chose their side instead of hers, and the realization hurts more than she can bear. To bury her painful emotions, she convinces herself that there is only one solution, which is to defeat Fudo once and for all. She tells her deepest parts that if she cannot have him, then no one will, and somewhere in her heart, she knows that if things had been different, she might have cast aside her pride and confessed her feelings, but now, it is already far too late. Emma remembers all those weeks ago, when she saw how Rin and Mary fought over Fudo, and her heart tightens with pain. She cannot forget how helpless she felt during their first real clash, when she was hurt so badly that she could not even finish the fight. She wished he had chosen her, wished he had come to her side instead, but she knows Fudo is not someone who submits easily, unlike her, so because of that, she decides she will end his suffering once and for all. So Amu orders Fudo to come at her like a wounded animal on the edge of its death, and he answers that it is exactly what he wants. He bursts forward at incredible speed, and Tsukuyo admits that Fudo truly is a fellow Sword Academy student. However, she notes that his technique is still flawed, which is why he cannot fully erase his presence. Fudo appears directly in front of Amu, and she slashes at him, but he presses his palm against her chest and fires his magic bullet. The impact sends her flying into a nearby flower bed, and the sensation brings back memories of their battle at their old school. Back then, Emu stood up immediately after taking the hit, while Fudo collapsed from exhaustion. She raised her hand to finish him, yet hesitated at the last moment. Even now, she does not fully understand the strange feeling that stopped her that day. Everyone watching is stunned that Emu can endure the attack and continue fighting. She challenges Fudo to hit her with everything he has, and he agrees, adding that he will not take responsibility afterward. They rush at each other and exchange brutal blows, abandoning technique and fighting with raw strength. Elsewhere, the headmistress contacts someone far away and reports that Fudo and Emu are disrupting the academy's peace. The woman on the other end feels relieved that Tsukuyo is not involved and wonders if she should intervene. She agrees that punishment is necessary, reminding the headmistress that a student's primary duty is to study. On the battlefield, Tsukuyo watches as both fighters completely give up on defense, striking each other repeatedly. Despite the pain they're feeling, Tsukuyo notices that they are smiling. She wonders if this is what friendship truly looks like. Meanwhile, Amu feels strangely happy as she absorbs every hit from Fudo, craving more of his attacks like a fat dude craving donuts. In her heart, she wants to be the only one he fights for and thinks about. After landing a powerful uppercut, Fudo nearly collapses, but Rin shouts for him to win. He forces himself back up and fires another magic bullet. Emu activates her auto counter, cutting him deeply, but as he begins to fall, Amu supports him to prevent him from falling and places his hand on her chest like it's a romantic anime, urging him to give everything he has. In that very moment, Amu finally understands that she is deeply in love with him. She accepts that loving someone means accepting loss, and asks him to fight without holding back, saying that she loves him so much that he wants to take his life. However, Fudo tells her that he doesn't feel the same way, and Amo collapses and loses consciousness out of heartbreak. Everyone watched in awe at his victory, but Tsukuyo immediately draws her blade and points it at Fudo, asking if it is now their turn to fight. She scolds him like an annoyed teacher, criticizing his reckless fighting style, and then declares that she will personally supervise him from now on. Fudo is confused, remembering that she previously mentioned punishment, and Tsukuyo explains that he ran off earlier before hearing the rest of her explanation. She adds that her supervision will actually benefit him, since she plans to stamp his permission slip. Everyone there who knows Fudo fully expects him to refuse her offer, even though they know it's a great deal, but even with a blade on his neck, Fudo rejects her offer. Before anything escalates, Satori's followers rush forward, intent on finishing Emo. But at that moment, the headmistress arrives and disarms them effortlessly. She orders everyone except Fudo to leave, then points at him and announces his expulsion. Later that day, Masuko is stunned to hear the news, but what shocks him even more is how calmly Fudo accepts it. Holding his permission slip, Fudo remarks that at least Rin will not scold him anymore. Masuko reminds him of everything he endured to collect all those stamps and leaves him alone to think. Days later, Warabi receives a photo of Kyobo, fully recovered and smiling. While she chats with the musketeers, Fudo arrives to check on her. He explains that he has been expelled, and she tries to stop him from leaving, but her injuries prevent her from standing. Fudo uses the moment to wish her luck and quietly walks away. At the same time, Satori wakes up in her room just as Fudo arrives, and she asks if she can look at him one last time. To hide her sadness, she pulls an exaggerated, creepy expression, but Fudo jokes that he has seen worse, making them both laugh. When she asks for another bathroom duel, he politely declines and says goodbye. As he leaves, he runs into Mizogi, who is nervous about being there for her sister. When Mizogi tries speaking to Satori, she struggles on what to call her, but Satori tells her she can call her anything she wants, explaining that she is done pretending to be someone else. Meanwhile, Rin and Mary meet with the headmistress, desperately trying to convince her to reverse the expulsion. They argue that Fudo was the person who stopped Amu's reign of terror and protected the academy, but the headmistress remains firm and tells them the decision is final. Later, Fudo encounters Tsukuyo near the academy fountain, and she asks him if he has thought about her offer. He reminds her that he is no longer a student, but she reveals that Emo has already left for the airport. Fudo immediately starts running, only stopping when Tsukuyo asks if he has collected all the stamps. He replies that it no longer matters, but she reminds him that until he is officially expelled, he is still a student. But then, she urges him to just go after Emo, saying that she will vouch for him as his new teacher. Fudo rushes to the airport and catches up to Emu, who is pretending to act tough, asking why he came when she was clearly not waiting for him. Fudo shows him his fully stamped permission slip, saying that he is now Tsukuyo's pupil, and jokingly offers Emu to run away with him. Emu tells him that she will do as she wishes, and that he should do the same. Hearing that, he knows she will leave, and asks if she wants to say anything before leaving. Seeing her chance, Emu rushes forward, kisses him, pushes him away, and declares that he belongs to her. Confused, Fudo asks her when he belonged to her, and she replies that her heart has always been his since the moment they first met years ago. Afterward, Fudo returns to the academy and runs into Rin, who pretends she did not dress up just to see him. She asks if his conversation with Emu was worth it, and reminds him that Emu nearly took his life. Fudo keeps the kiss to himself and says they probably will not meet again because of the expulsion. However, he finally understands her feelings and feels no regret watching Emu leave. Fudo then asks about his expulsion, but before Rin answers, Mary appears and calls Rin a traitor for getting to him first. She then delivers the surprising news that the headmistress was joking about the expulsion and Fudo is still enrolled. But it came to the catch, and that is from now on, Rin and Mary are now officially assigned as his watchers. On the way back, Rin stops them and draws her sword, reminding Fudo of the rules she laid out for him on his first day at school. Just like before, he refuses her conditions and tells them to meet him at school, but this time, they let him leave without trying to cut off his golden pickle. When Fudo arrives, he finds everyone waiting to welcome him back. Seeing this, Fudo smiles, realizing that he has finally found a place where he truly belongs, and he calls the academy his beautiful home. If you watched this anime recap until the end, comment down below Fudo and the 5 baddies. And if you love anime recaps like this, watch this video.